Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so glad you're with us today. Last week, we spoke for the second time with Ward Barkefer, whose wife, Sue, still visits him even many years after her transition. I've been teaching about the afterlife pretty intensively for more than a decade, and of course, I spent 50 years researching it. And I have to tell you, this is a brand new phenomenon. I can't recall that even, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I was hearing from anyone whose spouse had transitioned and remained in immediate, intense, close part of their lives, close contact right in their lives for years. I just had never heard of it. I don't think anyone had. But of course, we've always known that widows do hear from their departed loved ones. More than half of widows, they say, and widowers will see a vision of the departed spouse during the first year after they're widowed. And usually it happens when you're either falling asleep or just waking up. It happened to my mother when she was taking a nap. She woke up and there was my father standing there looking a lot younger right beside the couch where she was sleeping, and he disappeared. That's typical of what happens. They want us to know they're okay, so they send us these little postcards of themselves. And that's been what we've contended with really for all of history. That's all that spouses have had. And now things are very, very different. This is the first time in human history that we actually understand what is going on, and we know the veil is thinning. Long before this, even frankly, a couple decades before this, most people had no idea what happened at or after death. We just had some guesses, and we had the confusion that's been introduced by near-death experiences, but people didn't know. Now we know. And I think that helps us to understand this wonderful new phenomenon of the veil thinning and spouses staying married long after one of them has graduated. Our guest today is Stephen Simon, and he's a man who was born into Hollywood royalty. He has worked on projects that are the stuff of legend, and I won't even give you what some of them are, it'll amaze you. But two of them really amaze us. The first one that I want to mention is the Academy Award-winning What Dreams May Come, starring the wonderful sainted Robin Williams and Cuba Gooding Jr., and we all know that in the movie. And before that, he actually also produced Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. Both of them, as we know, are great movies about lovers seeking one another when one of them dies. And so now, not happily initially, but I think in some ways happily now, Stephen Simon's life is imitating art, which imitated life. Stephen's beautiful wife, whom he met late in life and who is his soulmate, unexpectedly transitioned in January of 2018. And she was only very young, I believe she was in her 50s, and then began an amazingly intense relationship between them that Stephen documents beautifully in his recent book, which he calls, and this won't surprise you at all, it's called What Dreams Have Come, Loving Through the Veil. I love this little book. I picked it up a day or so ago thinking, I can just skim through this. I read every word, and I read it so intensely that I never made a note. I kept thinking I'll stop now and make a note, and I never did. I mean, I don't remember whether I had any meals, but it was such a short book, you can read it that way. He and his beautiful Lauren wrote it together. You can read it, as I say, in one sitting, and it's the genuine story of a truly beautiful relationship. And it's a relationship that extends far beyond one lifetime, and we're going to talk about that. We are entering, you and I and all of us, an amazing new phase of Earth's history. What we've seen so far, there's no telling where it goes from here. But a truly great love story is always going to be a truly great love story in any age. Dear Stephen, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Hi, Roberta. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be with you. And I have to tell you, I wrote down one sentence today that I wanted to make sure that I said to you right up front. And the sentence was, the veil is thinning. And yes. You start this with that. And I have to tell you, if I could go back and retitle the subtitle of our book, I would probably change it to the veil is thinning, because I think it's a much more direct and enticing way to look at this, because
Oh,
there
yes.
is no question that that's true.
For someone who has been trying to figure out what was going on beyond the veil when the veil was rock solid in place, and I'm not even really psychic or anything, I have to say it's really quite amazing now. I mean, I'm in close contact with my own guide all the time. You're in close contact with your wife every minute. And so many other people are having these amazingly intense through the veil relationships. It's natural now. But for most of my life, this was unheard of. It never happened. This is the ultimate frontier, isn't it? This is the place where we finally confront what's actually true, what the depth is of reality. That's why, as you point out, it's a good title for a podcast, Seek Reality. And we're about to start a website called Seek Reality Online, just to help people peek through that veil, because the veil is so thin now. But for you, it's stunningly thin. You have such a beautiful love story. It was a late in life love story. And as I recall, you were at a screening of What Dreams May Come, right? Sure, not long after. I mean, this was 2003, I think, something like that. And you met this amazing woman. Tell that story a little bit.
Sure. I'd be happy to. It was 2003. I was living in Ashland, Oregon, which is about 4.5 hours south of Portland. And Lauren was living in a suburb of Portland. We did not know each other. There was a retro theater up here, an old-fashioned theater that did a screening of What Dreams May Come. And they asked, this is about 5 years after it was released, and they asked me if I would come up and speak. And I had a number of things that I was doing, but I just felt compelled to do it. It was in a suburb of Portland called Gresham that I'd never been to before. I came up, I had a lot of resistance to going, but I went. Now, Lauren, unbeknownst to me, felt really compelled to come because she had always loved What Dreams May Come. She had always loved Somewhere in Time. Lauren was 17 years old when Somewhere in Time was released, fell in love with it, and later on got her college boyfriend to take her to Mackinac Island, where we shot Somewhere in Time, because she felt so connected to it. So she got a babysitter, had 2 young kids, and came out to Gresham. She told me she almost turned around twice thinking, what the heck am I doing? We wound up in the lobby of the theater, and I saw her first, and I saw her from behind and from the side. And I was very drawn to her, and I went up and I tapped her shoulder. When she turned around, we literally just stared at each other. Now, it seemed like minutes. It was probably 10 seconds.
Right.
But what we talked about later is that we both had two thoughts right away, and they were exactly the same. Number one, I thought, oh my goodness, there she is. And she thought, oh my goodness, there he is.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, we also both thought, wow, our higher selves, our angels, man, to get us both in a little theater in Gresham, they deserve a 2-week vacation in Tahiti for this one. And we laughed about it later, but we knew right then, we knew we were looking in a mirror, and we were literally together from that second onward. And
wow.
From that point, it took about 2 or 3 years before we got married for various reasons. We had 5 adult kids the 2 youngest were not adults then, to combine into a family, and we did. And we had the most amazing relationship when she was physical. We still have a most amazing relationship now that she's not physical. But we realized that we had been together for a long time. Lauren is an intuitive. Lauren is a psychic. People would come to her from everywhere. She did past life regressions. She and I are both very into spirituality. And we used to talk about what our afterlife experience would be. And we knew we had been together literally in dozens of lifetimes. And she did a past life regression with me in which I went back to one of those. We were very connected. In late 2016, Lauren was diagnosed with stage 3 thyroid cancer.
Oh dear, yeah.
And it shocked us, both of us. She was a marathon runner. I mean, she's the healthiest person I've ever known.
Yeah, wow.
And that began a long process. She had to have 2 surgeries. She had iodine radiation treatment, which it cured the cancer. She didn't have the cancer anymore, but it destroyed her body.
Yeah.
And she became very weak. She tried so hard, but the last few months, I know that she knew something was coming. There was a night, and we talk about it in the book, where she said, honey, we need to design our afterlife experience. Let's go into detail about what we want it to be like, what we're going to be, where we're going to be, how we're going to be, and we did. And she said, write it down, put it in an envelope, and keep it someplace where you won't lose it. So when I found her that morning after I had been to the gym, January 3rd of 2018, and I came up and she was not stirring in our lab, Lola was huddled up really close to her on the bed, didn't even lift up her head when I came in. And I went around and then touched her. She was cold. She'd been gone for quite some time. I knew she was gone. I called 911 and fell apart. I don't remember a lot of what happened after that, but it was devastating for me. And then the next several weeks were spent trying to get in touch with her, which I finally did.
One of the things I want people to learn and take from this is that this kind of relationship is possible. I hear from a lot of people who say, oh, my husband just died, he was my soulmate, or she was my soulmate. But there are very few really entwined souls, we are told. There are many people who are in love in this lifetime. I mean, I'll have my 50th anniversary next year.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And I look so young, right? But,
oh my goodness, that is fantastic.
But the thing about it is that I know, and he knows, that we aren't, quote, soulmates. We are a very, very loving and happy couple. But I think I actually know who my soulmate is, and he's not in body right now. And I've never been male and female relationship with him. There are all kinds of soulmates and group couplings like that. I want people to know it is possible, but it's very unlikely in a given match, because people come into these lives for specific purposes. I knew I had to marry Edward because when I first saw him, there was a halo around him in a dark room. I mean, what else are you going to do when it's pointed out that clearly who you're supposed to marry? But it doesn't have to be a soulmate situation. I think I want people to understand that. But what you illustrate here is a perfect example of what people can do who are very close over many lifetimes. And I want you to talk about how you not so much how you came to understand, but what you understand to be true about your relationship with Lauren eternally, about the long-term relationship you've had with her.
Oh yeah, try a couple of millennia.
Right.
And I'm really serious about that. And this is not something that we came to since she transitioned. We talked about this for years.
Yes.
And we knew that we actually knew a couple of the past lifetimes. The first time we were together, honestly, Roberta, that we actually had a sense of was actually before Christ.
Yes.
So it was 2,300 years ago.
Yeah.
And we knew that we had dozens of lifetimes together. Now, not every lifetime for sure, but dozens of lifetimes in which we had various relationships. And it was, as people were reading the book, Lauren has an incredible sense of humor. And we spent most of our time when we were together physically. She actually sent me a card once, and on the inside it said, "Teasing you is my greatest joy, and you are my greatest love."
Oh,
and most of the time we wound up laughing at me. And I gave her a lot of ammunition.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, that's part of the reason the book is so much